parts bin special isn't something we usually think of positively, yet the BMW 1M Coupe is exactly that. For those unfamiliar with the term, a parts bin special is a car built not from the ground up, but by combining components developed for other models within a manufacturer's lineup. Usually, this produces an uninspiring, incohesive car that feels a bit like a cash grab. But this isn't quite what happened with the BMW 1M, a risky project driven by a persistent rogue BMW employee, met by pushback from disapproving bosses and an impossible budget to work with. Let's take a look into how this unlikely legend came to be. In the early 2010s, BMW had a problem. Following their immense success with the naturally aspirated, high-revving legends of the 80s, 90s and 2000s, they'd solidified what it meant to be a true M car. Fans expected not only the best of the best, but in its purest form. Even when presented with the 8,400 RPM banshee of a V8 in the E90 M3, fans were initially skeptical. It had dared to deviate from the lightweight straight-six BMW tradition. This meant it had a lot of proving to do. BMW knew its fans were passionate and carried high expectations for its M division. So, when a small team within BMW proposed they'd make an M car based off an entry-level BMW, they were met with pushback. If they were to do this, it would need to be done properly. A proper M car would be expensive to develop and high risk. But this determined team, led by Albert Biermann, couldn't shake the feeling that the 1 Series was the perfect base for an M car. Disapproving bosses didn't exactly say no to the project, but they tightened their reins, reducing the budget to a fraction of what's required to make a true M car. This left Albert one option: pull parts from other existing cars in BMW's lineup and a non-M engine from the BMW Z4. Yes, a parts bin special M car with the engine from a non-M car. With fans accustomed to bespoke M cars built from the ground up, sporting hand-built M-specific engines, this was a recipe for disaster. But that's not exactly how things turned out. Allegedly, while the head of the M division went away on holiday, like mischievous children left with the house to themselves, Albert's team swiftly seized the opportunity and got to work. A risky mission to prove the bosses wrong. Fast forward to today, and the 1M is now often referred to as BMW's best M car ever made. So how exactly did they pull that off? To make the 1M work, Albert's team had to get creative. With huge boots to fill and a small budget to work with, they needed an engine. But they definitely couldn't build one from the ground up. That was far too expensive. Instead, they turned to the infamous N54 engine from their current BMW Z4. This engine may have not been a naturally aspirated screamer, but after some tuning, it packs significantly more torque than its bigger and heavier brother, the E92 M3. With 332 foot-pounds of torque, briefly lifted to 369 in overboost, the 1M had pretty silly torque for such a small car. But the job wasn't done there. A true M car needs a chassis to back up all that straight-line shove. What better starting place than to just steal the already proven rear end and suspension from the E92 M3? But there was a problem. The 1 Series was fairly small in comparison to the M3. This rear end just wouldn't fit. No problem, they said. We'll give it huge bulging arches. What better way to distinguish a special M version from its humble roots? A decision which I'm sure most of us can agree was a great one. The 1M really does look great. After borrowing the M3's brakes, differential, suspension and many other parts, the team ended up with a Frankenstein monster. Certainly not the usual drill when building an M car. To make matters even worse for Albert's team, disapproving bosses and financial restraints were closing in, so there was only time to make one prototype car to test with. Come 2011, and ready or not, it was time. The 1M went on sale. The result was outstanding. All that extra torque, alongside a short wheelbase, had made for quite the lively car, but fortunately, the M1 was lively in a good way. Give it respect, and it was a hugely rewarding and exciting car to drive. Reviewers called it the most exciting M car for years, some even daring to say the best ever. With low weight and a short wheelbase echoing back to cars like the E30 M3, and one of the final hydraulic steering racks BMW would use in an M car, the car was a purist dream. Despite reaching 60 a smidge slower than the E92 M3, it felt mountains faster due to all that extra torque and usable power across the rev range. And the positives didn't end there. Weighing in at more than 100 kilos less than the M3, the brakes borrowed from the M3 competition package had even less work to do, meaning it had some killer stopping power. The 1M meant business. It had earned its place in the M division, but BMW couldn't stomach calling it the M1. This was a name reserved in the 70s by BMW's Halo supercar and first ever M car built alongside Lamborghini. This wedge-shaped mid-engine homologation special was a far cry from a souped-up 1 Series, so 1M it was. Sold exclusively in manual, the 1M was a purist dream. But for any viewers rubbing their hands together, preparing to make their next financial mistake, there is a problem. As aforementioned, Albert and his team were on a limited budget. This meant that their Frankenstein monster could only be sold in very limited numbers. BMW planned to only make 2,700 units, but were persuaded to produce more than double this number at just over 6,000. But despite this was still very low volume. This all resulted in very low supply, but very high demand. Great news if you managed to get your hands on one brand new, but bad news for the second-hand market buyers. When new, the 1M undercut the M3 by over 10 grand. They were sold for around £40,000 or $46,000 in the US, a very reasonable ask. But today, some of them are fetching north of 50 grand. You can still get a solid car for 40k, but it's a big ask for a 14-year-old performance BMW, particularly one supporting an engine with a track record of pretty poor reliability. No one really talks about this much with the 1M, but it's no surprise because it's a bit of a collector's car now, and it doesn't really matter if it's reliable or not when you've got super deep pockets and don't put many miles on the car anyway. But remember, this is the same N54 engine that came in the 335i, an engine which, despite its huge tuning capabilities, has a long and well-documented list of expensive and reoccurring common failures to stay on top of. Wastegate rattle, high pressure fuel pump failure, oil leaks, bad injectors, bad coil packs are just a small number of many common failure points on this engine. Probably not something you're overly worried about if you have 50 grand to drop on a 14-year-old 1 Series, but at least worthy of mention. Despite its wobbly reliability and high second-hand value, the 1M was an incredible car that far exceeded expectations. A car which on paper was doomed to be a mediocre purist nightmare, ended up labelled by some as the best M car BMW has ever made. Not only that, the 1M paved the way for one of the greatest modern sports cars BMW have built, the M2, a fantastic spiritual successor, which just like its older brother, borrowed parts from other M cars and a non-M engine upon release. The 1M was revolutionary. It showed BMW that there was a huge market for smaller compact M cars with lower weight and nimble short wheelbases, something that they'd steered away from after the change from the E30 to the E36 M3. We also likely have the 1M to thank for the mere existence of the M2, and that alone is worthy of respect.